Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Whitaker Community Council Board meeting. We're going to have folks filter in just a little bit. But in the meantime, I wanted to talk about different ways that you can voice your interest in participation. Because we have an intimate number of us tonight, and we're going to have more folks coming in just a little bit. I wanted to show the different ways that you can voice your interest in participation tonight. The first is by raising your physical hand. So if you just throw your hand up, you can say, hey, that's exactly what Gail's doing. Welcome, Stephen. Welcome, Teresa. And another way that you can voice your interest in participation is by raising your physical hand. So if you just do the raise hand function like myself or Gail's doing, that'll be an indication that you'd like to participate. No one's calling in tonight, so I'll just skip that. But the last way and best way for me, if you have an interest in participation, is just to throw into the Zoom chat that you have an interest in participating. Angie just did a great example of how to be able to communicate in the Zoom chat. She asked for Sue's last name, so we can include that in the minutes. And let's say Sue has an interest in participating, and Sue puts in, hey, I'd like to speak.
Am I looking at the wrong day?
Then what I'd do is put Sue in the queue by say Sue is in the queue. And then the speaking order. Stephen and Sue. So those are the four ways that we can voice our interest in participating. And this is the way that we're going to be able to make sure that everyone has a chance to be able to speak tonight. So I wanted to pass it on to Gail. Welcome, Jessica, to just go through some Zoom practices so that everyone can make sure that their computers are dialed in so that we can hear you if you choose to be able to speak. Gail?
Thank you, Ian. I'd just like to go over a couple of basic settings on Zoom. First of all, just remind you that you have control of your own mute button, and what that means practically is please pay attention to whether or not you're muted. When you're speaking, we'd love to be able to hear you, so go ahead and unmute. But when you're not speaking, sometimes the background noise can be distracting, so we ask you to go ahead and put your mute on. The other thing is that if you are on a laptop or a computer, you may have access to a button up in the upper corner of the screen that says Turn on Original Sound. If you select that button, it will turn blue, probably. I don't know, mine does. And what it will do is it will help this microphone on your computer to focus on your voice. And that means that you'll sound clearer and it will be easier for us to hear you. Keeping in mind that microphones only have a limited space where they can pick things up. So the closer or the more consistently you're close to your screen, the easier it will be for us to hear you. If you move far away, sometimes voices can vanish and then it's hard for us to understand. So that's basic Zoom, and I'm really glad that you're all here, and we're looking forward to hearing from you and also to your input. Thank you.
Thanks, Gail. Does anyone have any questions about how to be able to voice your interest in participating before we move on to the rest of the agenda? Okay, then the next item on our agenda is public comment. And so this is open to members of the public as well as board members. So feel free, if you have an item for public comment, to raise your hand or put it in the chat that you'd like to be in the queue, and I will put you in there. So we've got Delinia first. Delinia, feel free to go right on ahead. And if anyone else would like to speak, feel free to raise your hand, put it in the chat, or use the raise hand function. And then Angie, you're on deck after Delinia. Delinia?
I just need a couple of things, an Epson scanner for receipts. And we paid for 5 months of QuickBooks, and I wanted to see if we could spend the additional $338 for that. And then I had a couple of other things, but those are two things that, oh, and then I also need for the historical project, some file folders and some other office supplies.
Thanks so much, Delinia. Are these super urgent, or do you think we could talk about it next week during the grant working group to be able to talk about how to be able to fit those into the budget and then get board approval? Or would you like to get approval on that tonight?
the quicker the better on this stuff. There's a couple of things, like we're gonna need the scanner pretty soon after we get your receipts and stuff. But the other thing was that the gentleman that was talking last week about his neighbor, like his little area, Dennis Sando, do we have his information? Is anybody from the board gonna get in touch with him?
Yep. So just to answer your question, Delinia, I'm in touch with Dennis and he's meeting with city officials. And then after he meets with city officials and gets the information for the grant, he'll send us the final version of his grant. So I can send you the draft version if you'd like after the board meeting, just so that everyone on the board can have the draft version of the grant that he wants to submit to the city's neighborhood and matching grant program. And Andrew has his hand up as well. Andrew?
Okay, I guess that was my question. Did Andrew pick it up? And okay, cool. Awesome.
So to be clear, I didn't pick it up. I was just gonna say, we're starting the transportation subcommittee. I think we're meeting next week. I gotta check my calendar, but I thought that would be a great place to address Dennis's issue because it's transportation and we're trying to work with people in the neighborhood on transportation stuff. So that's all I want to say. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Awesome. And then, yeah, I guess that's all I have.
Yeah, Delaney, if you think that it can't wait, I'd just welcome for you to make an opportunity to make a motion later tonight to spend a certain amount of funding from the grant funding for the 3 items you talked about, the file folders, the QuickBooks, and then the receipt scanner. If you have an estimated line item cost for each of those 3, and then we can do it retroactively, budgeted into the budget after. I don't imagine it's going to be huge expenses, right? I think it's going to be rather modest expenses.
Thank you.
Cool. We've got Angie next, and then Jen, you're on deck. Angie?
All right, so 2 things. The first is this Sunday, once again, we'll be out cleaning Scobert Gardens and surrounding area before the Whitaker Community Market gets out there. So feel free to come join. I'll have trash bags. I have a sharps kit. I have a couple of pickers. You might want to bring your own, but we got up there at 9. We were done by 10 and we got a lot of stuff cleaned up. So feel free to come with us. The second is we were discussing how we would feel about having our ice cream social outside in August. We know our numbers are ratcheting up right now. We were actually looking at some data and we are worse off at this point of July than we were last year with COVID cases. So we want to discuss possibly as a board whether or not we want to go forward with an outdoor event, the ice cream social. And we also need to think about our meetings for next month. We were talking about offering a hybrid in-person online meeting. We're on the schedule, the calendar at Alluvium. So we have some decisions to make as we're still kind of in a tough spot in this pandemic as of the last week or 2 weeks or so. So I don't know if we want to vote on that or have, put that later in the schedule. What are you thinking, Ian?
Yeah, I'd leave that to you, Angie. If you wanted, you could make a motion now. We could do a straw poll too, just kind of see where people are at.
Yeah.
If you
That's
want
what I feel like.
something informal. Yeah. How do folks feel about doing an outdoor event for the ice cream social? We've got big thumbs down from Thea, thumbs up from Anand, thumbs up from myself, and a couple of questions. We've got a thumbs down from Jen too.
Yeah,
and Delinia, it seems like you have your hand up as well. Did you want to chime in and comment?
Instead of an ice cream social, what about like renting a whole bunch of ice cream trucks and let them go through the neighborhoods? I mean, like
that is actually not a bad idea.
Fun and whimsical.
Yeah, if we were going to do that, we would need to, and we were going to use COVID funds, we would need to pair that with some vaccine confidence stuff. But what I think would be a great idea is if we did that and gave people free ice cream and information about our next clinic for August.
The
I think that is
napkins- the
probably
napkins.
the coolest idea.
That's great.
Yeah,
We could
that's-
do the napkins,
yeah,
like put the stuff on the napkins. Hey, come to our next one.
yep,
I don't
that's
know.
really cool.
It's whimsical.
Yeah, that's really fun. Thea, you had your hand up as well, and I haven't forgotten the speaking order. Jen, you are certainly next after Angie, after Angie's comment, and then Thea, you're after Jen. So Thea, go ahead. Oh, Thea, you're muted. Sorry.
I'm on an Apple and I'm not used to it. Do I give my receipts for the clinics for the tablecloths and all those supplies to Delenia directly? Okay, and then on the ice cream social, I love Delenia's idea. I think we're trying to get the message out there to get vaccinated and not become a super spreader event, because we get a lot of people that come to the ice cream social. And with what our numbers are, that makes me nervous. It sounds like a mixed message. And there was one more item. Oh, Delenia, if you need file folders, I can get you some temporary file folders. That's it.
Oh, thank you.
Do you mind if I just do a quick raise of hands? Because I feel like we have a good group of people here. Everybody that's here, if you would prefer the ice cream truck idea to the actual in-person event, could you please raise your hand in support of ice cream truck? All right, that's most of you. Those of you that think that even that's, or those of you that think in person would be more, would fit better, would you raise your hand? Okay, so if everyone feels comfortable, let's move forward with the ice cream truck and figure out how to get our information out there. Thank you very much. And not tonight, but in a week or so, we're going to start talking about whether to do in-person hybrid meetings. We can hold off on that though. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. Jen, you are next in the queue, and then Thea, you're on deck after Jen. Jen?
So I'm hoping this is the right time to give a little bit of a charter review in a nutshell as to what's going on and that it is being reviewed. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's great. As long as we can keep it to about like 3 minutes tops and just kind of giving quick updates. That way we can give enough time for Thea, myself, and anyone else who wants to do public comment. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So so it is moving forward and it's picked up some momentum after a lot of stuff. And one of the provocations that was brought up to deal with was the elections that we had in April. That has been addressed, and we built a structure to allow for a lot of fairness and shedding some light and really communicating with the Whitaker membership. And so that has been addressed. There's a lot more going on at the same time besides the charter review. I think that there's an IT group that is working on developing technical abilities to communicate. And at the same time, you know, Dan is working on the historical part. Everybody's working on working parts. And eventually, if things go as they should, as we hope to, they will be easier to manage because of the technology that's going to be applied. So it's going to sound like, Angie, we may increase some of your work a little more, but it'll be done with a push of a button. So that's part of it. And so we've been cleaning up and paying attention to technology because that's something I know nothing about, but there are those who do. So staying in communication is what's really important here, which is why I'm speaking a little about the charter review. And so we're doing checks and balances, and we're trying to simplify it a little more. And because of the various versions of the charter, I've decided to use the charter that the city puts out with it's a model charter and its guidelines and the guidelines within the guidelines to address each article and go forward. And one of the driving forces in guiding light is the Article 3, which is the purpose, period. And that purpose, I think, got skewed a little bit. So we got to get a little back on track in communicating better with the community of Whitaker and the members. And so that, I looked at the map that I'm going to have put into the charter. It really shows a good definition of what makes Whitaker. And besides being two different zip codes, there's a whole lot of people that we are including by means of communicating. So communications is a big aspect of what is being driving things, and how to upgrade all of that and do it with technology. And then other things will evolve as a result of that, because we have more abilities to connect. So we have more time to do other things. So the purpose as Article 3 and the membership is people, residents, property owners, and business, and they're entitled to one vote. And there's no voting by proxy. That's just a part of it. But purpose and membership is the guiding force to address the different articles that comes later. And as a result of all these versions and not having a file to work with, we decided to make a book. And in that book will be a table of contents, the files, documents. There will be an index and a legend and a lot more. And whomever that seat becomes vacant, you pass it on to that next person. So it's clear. And a lot of this work can be done through technology. So it doesn't belong to me, whatever I'm working on, it belongs to the WCC. And it needs to be contained and backed up. So that's it in a nutshell. Any comments or questions?
Thank you so much, Jen. We've got a comment from Gail. Gail, I don't know if you want to talk about your comment or if you wanted me to read it for you. So the comment from Gail is that she's concerned that the template charter from the city won't reflect the vision of our specialness. How is it decided not to use the last version of the charter that was developed and submitted to the city? And then also I have that concern too, because the charter that was developed for neighborhood associations that aren't nonprofit organizations. And so I hope that we can maybe use the model charter as one thing to draw upon, but also look to charters that are model charters for other nonprofit organizations, as well as the charter that was developed by past board members that contributed to it. So I don't know if you wanted to touch on that concern a little bit from Gail and myself regarding the use of the charter template from the city that was exclusively developed for neighborhood associations.
Well, we have addressed that and we looked at other charters. Ours will hopefully be one of the most updated charters. A lot of them have not been updated for whatever reasons. Oh, the other thing I didn't mention is the influence that the COVID-19 played on taking everything up so that it's higher, deeper, bigger, and wider of communication. That played a strong part on thinking things through back to the communication. That I think that influenced the whole world, but the city is also working on things. So we have looked into other charters, and we are definitely going to have Whitaker in mind, because it's impossible not to, and reflect that, because it needs to be shined on. I hope that answers. I don't have a direct, complete answer because we're still working on it.
Totally. Yeah, thanks so much, Jen. And I'm hoping during the August board meeting, we can give every committee a chance to give an update. So that would be transportation, the arts committee, you, public health and safety, so that everyone can have a chance, basically a portion of the meeting to give updates on progress and on when we can expect to have a chance to be able to weigh in on projects related to the committees. So thanks so much for the update, and really appreciate the work that you and Delinia are doing. And Delinia, I see your hand up as well.
And just to answer the concerns, you have two very unique individuals from the Whitaker who are actually working on the charter. And we are keeping everything addressed, and we're thinking it very methodically and how it works for the community. As Jen said, we're thinking of the general membership first. That's our first and foremost process. But once we're done reviewing it, our next step is to give it to Teresa, because we are going to have challenges where there will be a split vote, and then we've decided that Teresa will split that vote, and then we'll present that. Then we'll present that little piece to everybody else, and then everybody can vote on that. But we're still working on it pretty hard.
Thank you both again thanks for the three of you for working on it. And yep, really appreciate the work that you're doing to be able to build upon the work that's been done by folks over the past couple of years, and the last 40 years of people adding to the charter and having it grow over time. I wanted to let folks know that we're a little over on the public comment, but I wanted to give everyone a chance to speak. Thea, you're next up in the queue, and then Sue, you're on deck after Thea. Thea?
I did forget to tell you that
Thea, I think we lost you. So we're going to jump to Sue next, and then we'll put you right after Sue if you come back on.
And so they're kind of hanging out, and that's kind of deterred that behavior in the last week or so. And then I will not be able to set up the clinic. So if someone else can take over for me and work with Margaret, that would be awesome. But my husband and I have determined it's not safe for me to go out anymore. So until numbers go back down, I'm locking back down. And if you guys don't have the latest charter, I have copies of that. I have copies of all sorts of stuff. I can send it all to you, Ian. And thank you for your work, Delaney and Jennifer.
No, we have everything that we need. We're just using the guidelines and making sure that everything that we've done and are going to do, it lines up with the city, so it's a faster transition when we want to do stuff.
And Thea, would you mind repeating the first part of what you shared? I don't know if it was just my computer or maybe some others, but I couldn't hear the first piece of what you said.
So I shared that the EPD volunteers are back on, and EPD is going to start using those in our neighborhood. We're still working on community officers, but in the meantime, the volunteers, and most of those people are made up of retired officers. So they're going to be working. And one of the other concerns, I'm getting lots of calls about whether we're having a block party. And I keep just saying, Whitaker Community Council does not do the block party. I did call the city. There has not been a permit pulled, but I hear there is a party going on. So I don't know. I just keep saying it's a rumor, but we have nothing to do with it.
Thanks,
So.
Steve. Anand and Andrew have an update on that, and then Sue, you're going to be right on deck after Andrew and Anand give their comment.
So give me just a second here. Where did I put that? Okay. So in the chat, there is a link to the current Whitaker Block Party webpage, and I'll just read you what it says. Join us at the Whitaker on Saturday, August 7th for our volunteer-driven event in the heart of the Whitaker, historic Whitaker neighborhood. You can't keep a good neighborhood down. Oregon's recent return to normalcy. Who's normal? Our volunteers are working tirelessly again to bring you the best local and touring bands and performances across the slightly more scaled down experience, and offering live music stages and more. 21 and up beer garden and main stage will be located at the Old Ninkasi Brewing Patio, 272 Van Buren. No street closures, arrive early, blah, blah, blah. So it says it's from noon until 10 p.m. And you can see where the link is. It's got also things with bands, food carts, and sponsors. But yeah, we were discussing that at the Health and Safety Committee, and not real happy about it, because Block Party generally has been shoulder to shoulder, and What with the lack of vaccines being placed in people's arms and the variants being very contagious, probably not a great idea. I said I would talk to Chris and kind of see what's going on. Believe me, I can't tell Chris anything, but I can at least get information. I see you nodding your head, Thea. Very good. but we do have good communication, he and I, so I can at least see where he's thinking about things and see if there's anything else to add what's already up on that. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe we could at least have, I don't know, some information about how to get vaccinated or something there. Okay, one other thing, since I'm talking, I'll make it really quick. The one other thing I put up there was something, and you guys are going to want to say, why is he doing this? There's a link to sun ovens. And the reason there's a link to sun ovens is because I bicycle past Washington Jefferson Park every day I go to work, and I see all these barbecues and propane tanks out there. At least while the sun is up, sun ovens can cook as well or better than anything that you can get that's portable. What I would like to do, if nobody disagrees, or is contact the Sun Oven Corporation, tell them we would like them to donate like 5 of these things as a pilot project to see if we could get people to use them instead of fires, right? And if it goes well, maybe use that to talk to the city to see if the city would buy some more of them for people who are outdoors and cooking, right? Anyway, so that's just my thought, trying to reduce the fires for whatever it's worth. How are people thinking about that?
I like it.
Anybody have any great disagreements? Is it okay if I at least contact them and see if they're willing to do it? Okay, cool. I'll try, see what happens. We got a 501c3, at the very least they can take it off their taxes. Thank you very much.
Andrew, did you want to add anything else quickly before we? Nope.
I don't need anything. I was just going to say that I know a friend of mine works at Hop Valley, and they are having all of their staff work the day of the supposed block party. So I think that local businesses are expecting a crowd. So just information.
Yeah.
Sue, thank you so much for being so patient. Wanted to give you all some time to speak, and then I'll go after you, Sue. But please go on ahead.
I just had some announcements. We usually have a series of concerts every summer at Schoberg Park. And so last summer we just had a few, and I made everybody be very distant from each other. And then this summer we already had one, Brian Kutian, and then we have one coming up on 7/28. That's a Wednesday, Chico Swal at 7 p.m. And then the next one is August 4th, and that'll be at 6:30, and that's Dharmika Herschel. So I hope those of you who feel comfortable come out. It hasn't been crowded, but it has been nice to have some musicians playing in the park.
Thank you, Sue. Angie, we've got a hand up from you, so feel free to go on ahead.
Sue, is there a place, like a link where I can send people to this information?
I made a Facebook page for Brian.
Chico Swal did a Facebook page for the event.
Oh, did it? Good.
We can put it in the chat what it's called so you can find it. I'll look it up.
Awesome.
And Dharmika is probably going to do one for the event.
All right.
So yeah, tell people to check on Facebook, and I could also put something in the Whitaker page about it.
That'd be awesome. Thank you very much.
And Sue, we're looking for acoustic musicians for our wellness clinics where we do COVID-19 vaccines. So if you have anyone who is looking to get paid a stipend to do music, we'd love to connect with you through our arts committee, which meets on Mondays. We have clinics scheduled for the last of this month. That's the 30th, and then the 8th of August, and then the 27th of August. So if you want to touch base, you can find me on Facebook, or I can direct message you my email address. I'll just put that in the chat right now.
Okay, and I didn't quite hear you're looking for someone to get paid to coordinate musicians. Is that what you said?
Or to
Not
play.
coordinate musicians, but rather we're looking for acoustic musicians. Yep. To play
Okay.
our
So I
vaccine.
could tell you some musicians that you could call or something, or however you want to do it. Sure.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, you
But
I can email.
Great.
Sounds fantastic. Thanks so much, Sue. And then I wanted to really quickly, because we're 15 minutes over time already, do a couple of requests. So from Holly Hine, who's our graphic designer on contract, who's designing our social media messaging, asked me to share. She is doing a burlesque show, which is a benefit on Saturday, August the 14th. This is a benefit show for a gentleman who's suffering a degenerative neurological disorder. And she asked for the WCC sponsorship. I wanted to bring that to the board for consideration. There's a lot of complexities there. We don't have a policy for financially sponsoring events, nor do we have a kind of direction as a board regarding, advocating for indoor events. So I think we have a lot of things to talk about first before we consider something like that. But I did want to send it to the board after the meeting, so you had a chance to review that. Next, I wanted to talk about safe sleep sites, because today the city council met to discuss the safe sleep sites. And I wanted to let folks know that 3 actions were taken by council. So now we have up to 140 new sites for folks to be able to sleep at. So can you all give me a thumbs up if you can see it says potential council actions. So today the city council moved to approve the Chase Commons Park for use as a safe tent site. So the safe sleep sites take 2 forms. You can do car camping or tent camping. So that's between 50 and 60 tents. They made a motion to approve 310 Garfield. So that's 2nd and Garfield. It's to the west of the Whitaker. It's closer to the Mission than anything. So it's still very close to the Whitaker, but it's not in the Whitaker, as a hybrid safe tent and safe parking site. So that's between 50 and 60 sites or tents. And then they made a motion to approve 450 Highway 99 as a rest stop. So that's only up to 20 sites, but still it's a huge move, meaning that we have up to an additional 140 sites for unhoused neighbors to safely either tent camp or camp in vehicles. So it's certainly not the 12 sites that were initially discussed last time the council met about this, but certainly it's a huge step in the right direction. And Councilmember Syret had our back, saying that it was so urgent that that council needed to take more action on this, and encouraged council to meet in August when they were normally on break. So that's, I think, big to say, hey, we need to act on this now, and we need to move faster to find places for people. And also she encouraged that we need to find places for the folks who are at Washington Jefferson, because the Whitaker is disproportionately bearing the burden of folks who have no other place to go. And so she suggested that those persons be the first people who are given safe places to sleep. So I just wanted to give an update on those 2 things before we moved on with the agenda. So with that, does anyone else have any items for public comment before I pass it on to Gail and Thea for an update on the Whitaker Community Council Program Coordinator hiring committee? Okay, well then, Thea and Gail, I will pass it on to you 2 to give us an update on the work of the hiring committee.
Thank you, Ian. Since Thea is having some connectivity issues, Thea, I invite you to chime in, but we had a little bit of trouble understanding you last time, so if you don't, that's probably why. So the hiring committee has been meeting since our last discussion, so it's been 3 weeks now, and have done a number of interviews, and we're very excited because we have a fantastic candidate that we are hoping to get approval from the board this evening to offer the contracted position to. That was an upside down sentence structure. I hope you English teachers will forgive me. The candidate that we have selected, you should have gotten an email that included a link to all of the candidate interviews, and specifically to the interview and the documents associated with the candidate that we selected. It was a really interesting and rigorous process, and we had a lot of fun, also a lot of challenges with it, attempting to to basically give everybody the same interview, which, as it turns out, is challenging for those of us who aren't actors. And but we did a pretty good job, and we met some really fabulous people, some really interesting folks. So let me just open up. Oh, I should have had this here. Ian, do you have the I don't know. Which part of this would you think is the most appropriate to share? I know that all the documents went out to everybody, but I'm thinking maybe the comments around our selected candidate would be the most appropriate. Could you share those?
I certainly can. And my apologies for not sharing this earlier. Tonight is the Whitaker Community Council board meeting for those who have just joined. So this is when the board discusses board business that we're doing on behalf of the neighborhood. So while normally it's not appropriate for members of the public to comment during board meetings outside of the public comment, we've invited Stephen to give a update and a presentation on a project he's been doing at the behest of the board and the previous Whitaker Community Council chair. So just a little bit of background before I share the document with everyone. So I'm going to pull that up right now. It's going to take me just a moment, but I'll pull it up. And it's the candidates scores from each of the interview committee panelists, as well as some of the impressions from each interview committee panelists as well.
And just to remind everybody, this position is one that we are funding using grant money from our COVID relief. And so the focus of this position, this program coordinator, will be to help us move forward with our volunteer efforts around COVID vaccine clinics and other health and wellness efforts under that umbrella. Also, to help us with administering and maintaining compliance with the grants that Ian has found for us thus far, and also to assist in gaining more grants moving forward. Because one of the things that we want to be able to do is keep doing good work in the neighborhood, even once the money that we currently have is spent, and ideally way past the time when there's funding for COVID in particular. So we're hoping that this is a person who will want to stay with us and work with us for some time. But as you recall, we've set up this contract so that it's a 2-month probationary period and then a possibility for extension after that. So the candidate that we chose was actually the one that we had listed as our second choice, but it was a very close second. So it was really like a neck and neck situation where we were going to win either way. So Doriandra Smith is her name, and these are my impressions here. There's her name and her spelling of her name, which I apologize if I butcher it. I think I got it right that time. So these are my impressions and the rubric score that I assigned to Doriandra after her interview. We did have a list of the same questions we asked each candidate, and we gave a score based on a sliding scale of low number being a negative, like not a good score, and a higher number being a good score. So I think the highest number a person could score would have been 5 times 7, so 35. And nobody scored a 35. But Doriandra did very well. So I'll let you just kind of scan this. I don't think you need me to read it to you. But I'd, at this point, like you to just kind of take a look at the things that we saw, what we noticed. And
Gail, can you hear me now?
I can, Thea. Please
Okay,
chime in.
Great. So as Gail said, we had the same questions to ask. We also had a writing sample for each candidate. It was part of our interview. And then I checked each candidate's references and then sent the comments that were made by their references. So that should be in the files as well. And Doriandra came highly recommended. She's run the Brew Fest and the Bach Festival the last several years. And she's really looking to work in the community.
So the thing that tipped us towards a different choice for our first choice, and I did think it was kind of interesting that we all sort of had the first and second choices were pretty well the same even before we came together to discuss it. It had to do with grant writing experience, and since that initial the one that we ranked first, it didn't work out for her to take the position for personal reasons. Our hope is that since she's expressed some interest in volunteering, maybe we'll be able to get some wisdom from her, and we could end up getting the best of both worlds, which would be the contributions of both of these fabulous people to our work and our efforts here in the Whitaker. So I would love to hear any questions anybody has. I did see Delinia's hand go up.
So I just want to make sure, are you and Thea making a motion for a vote by the council to approve Doriandra Smith for the 2-month initial contract for the position tonight?
I will be making that. I was going to see if there were any questions first, if that's all right.
Gotcha. Delinia, you're up next. And if any other board member has a comment or a question, just give me a shout and I'll put you in the queue.
No, my question was, why not the first one instead of the second one? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Basically, just because it turned out that after she made the application and did the interview, she realized that for personal reasons she wouldn't be able to take the position after all. It was really kind of sad because we were all very excited about her joining our efforts, but you know, sometimes things can change pretty quickly, and I guess that's kind of what happened with her. So yeah, no, she was excited about the position. We were excited about her, but you know, stuff happens. So she did say she would like to volunteer though with our efforts. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to still have a relationship with her on a volunteer level rather than on a contracting level. Does that answer your question?
It did. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments about any of it? Okay. Well, then I would like to formally make a motion that the board approve our offering this contracted position for program coordinator to Doriandra Smith, with the understanding that it is a 2-month probationary contract with an option to extend at that point, given that it, you know, presuming that she does a great job and we agree and she agrees. So that's my motion. Can I get a second, please?
I will second it.
Thank you, Thea.
And before we vote, I just wanted some clarity. Will the board have an opportunity to vote on the extension of offering the contract again after the 2-month probationary period?
I believe that's how we have it written into the contract, that it will be that we'll reassess as a board, and the candidate will reassess on their end as well. It's an option for both of us, but yes, this will come back to the board and we'll make our recommendations. Incidentally, we're going to assign one point of contact for this contracted position, and that point of contact is going to be Ian. And the reason for that is that we don't want to overwhelm our brand new hire with a lot of input from the whole board. So we're going to ask that each, presuming that this individual accepts our offer, which we feel confident that she will, that we respect that chain of connection and allow Ian to be the point person for this contracted person. So I hope that's clarifying.
And Ian, do we need to vote on that as well, or do you want to discuss that later?
Yeah, and so I have thanks for clarifying that, Gail, and I have a bit later about single points of contact for all of our contractors moving forward. So we have a motion from Gail, a second from Angie. So can all of the board members, and welcome Travis, who's just joined us. Delinia, do you have a hand up, or are you voting in the affirmative?
It's more of a question for you, Ian. So this person is supposed to be taking some of the load off of you, is going through you, you know, is that the comfortable position to just put it right through you?
It's going to be a huge relief. It's finally someone's going to be representing our organization, and it's not going to be me, and I have the utmost confidence. We had a super rigorous process, and Gail is being generous. I mean, we had some very heated arguments because we knew how important it was to the organization.
Vital discussion.
Yes. So yeah, I'm super confident that I'm going to be able to step back and the volunteer coordinator is going to give us all the opportunities to step back. If we want to volunteer, if we want to do direct service provision to our unhoused neighbors, if we want to do setup and takedown and volunteering at our volunteer clinics, we can. If we want to distribute mailers, flyers, we can, but we don't have to anymore. And so that's the real big difference with this hire. Of course, it's tied to the grant for now, but hopefully we can be able to get new grants for new projects where it gives us all the opportunity to step back and yet step in when we want to. So thanks for bringing up that point, Delinia. And I wanted to give everyone a chance to vote. We do have enough board members here for a quorum. So we have 12 board members. A quorum is half plus one. So that's 7. And we have, I believe, 8 board members present here tonight. So if all those
can I just say something real quick? Just to your concern, Delinia, the entire hope here in allowing this individual to report directly to Ian is to make sure that his needs are met and that his burden is lighter, maybe even light. So that's the goal here, is to make this an easier thing for him. So since he's the one who knows what he needs, it made sense to have him be the point of contact. If that doesn't make sense at some point in the future, we can, as a board, make a decision to shift that responsibility. But it made the most sense in this moment to all of us on the hiring committee.
Agreed.
And this woman is very good at herding cats.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, she ran the Brewfest, so.
But then she heard cats in a tornado and a fire coming.
Yeah, drunk cats even, so,
Cats with authority problems on a major level.
Yes. Okay, I think we're ready to vote.
Okay. So with that, we actually have 9 board members here tonight, not 8, my apologies. So all those in favor of the motion to hire Doriandra Smith as the program coordinator for a 2-month contract, please raise your hand or say aye. All those who are voting nay, please raise your hand. Okay, so seeing none, I just wanted to give everyone an opportunity. If they'd like to abstain from a vote, you don't have to raise your hand at all. I won't call for abstentions, but you don't have to raise your hand, and that'll be a signal to Angie to let her know that you'd like to abstain from a vote. So thank you so much for Gail and for Thea for presenting that. I'll reach out to Doriandra and let her know that the board would like to make her an offer. And I'll just say that there's an entirely a possibility that she'll say no, right? And so I just want to, And so I just wanted to let the board know that that might be a possibility. And if it happens, I'll let you know. But if she accepts, I'll let the board know too. So next, I'd like to just give a quick little presentation on contractor management. And so this is what we talked about before. And basically what I'd like to propose to the board tonight is that we have a single board point of contact for our contractors now and moving forward. So I can't see everyone. Can you see the screen here that says contractor management? If you just want to holler at me, I can't see your faces. So if you want to see, yep, sweet.
Yeah, we can see it.
Cool. So what I'm proposing tonight is that we have a single board member acting as the point of contact for each of our contractors. And I wanted to start with Delinia, and I almost positive I spelled your name correctly. So Delinia would be, I'm proposing in my motion, acting as our accounting contractor. So because she serves as our treasurer, that means that she would be the single point of contact for, currently we contract with Andrea Garcia. And that means that if we hired on future accountants on contract for grants or for our annual review, that Delinia would act as our single point of contact. That means that none of us reach out to Andrea. That means that Delinia would act as our single point of contact. And that if we had questions for the accountant, we would ask those questions through Delinia. Similarly, I'm proposing tonight that Angie act as our website contractor. So currently we're contracted with Brent and Joe Studios, but if we worked with other folks regarding website or content updates, that we would, and Delinia, I spelled your name wrong, no! That for the future, Angie would be the single point of contact for our website. So if we had questions regarding the website, we wouldn't reach out to Brent and Joe, we'd reach out directly to Angie. Third, I'm suggesting that I be the single point of contact for the program coordinator. At the time I put this together, I didn't know if the board was going to vote affirmatively for, oh gosh, the candidate, but since we have, I propose
Doriandra.
Thank you, Doriandra Smith, that I be the single point of contact for her. So if any board members had questions regarding Doriandra, they would reach out directly to me. And then lastly, I'm suggesting that Doriandra act as a single point of contact for all of our contractors working related to COVID. So because Doriandra is coordinating the clinics, she would also be coordinating the contractors. So graphic design contractors, currently the contract for Holly and Emma is almost ending. I think they each have 3 and 6 hours respectively for their contracts. But for videography contracts as well, Michael Ria is finishing up the videos for Protected Together and Bring Us Back. That would signify, and Delaney, I see that you have your hand raised, that Doriandra would act as the single point of contact for our COVID contractors, so that if that means that we as a board, we wouldn't reach out to them anymore. So that means that I myself wouldn't reach out to Michael or Holly or Emma, that all of that would go through Doriandra. But then in turn, I could reach out to Doriandra if I had questions regarding the contractors related to graphic design and videography. So I was kind of over in my different screens, so I couldn't see who raised their hand first, but I do see now Delinia and Thea both have their hands up. So I'm hoping that either of you know who raised your hand first. Delinia, I think it's you. Go for it.
I guess my question is Doriandra also going to be handling the vendors as far as like the food vendors and the musicians, or is that all going to be a little bit more separate?
Yeah, thanks so much for that. And I'm hoping that she would be the point of contact for all of our vendors related to our clinics as well, because I think that the reason that we're hiring on Doriandra on contract is to manage our clinics wholesale. So that would be everything from printing flyers to distributing flyers to bringing on volunteers to making sure that our contractors show up. So I unfortunately I forgot about our amazing musicians we have. Yeah, and the food. I saw an amazing picture of Angie who got shaved ice during our last clinic. But yeah, that's a great add. And so I'd like to kind of amend that last slide and then include musicians as well as food truck vendors in that as well. Thea, your hand up is as well. Feel free to go ahead.
So that was my comment, because I know Margaret likes doing procurement, and I'm wondering if Margaret could continue, and she asked about that. Could she continue doing procurement, but she would work with Doriandra?
So I'm suggesting that we not do that. I think what it does is it adds a layer of complexity, and instead
Sounds good.
This creates a lot of simplicity and a single point of contact, where
I agree.
We empower certain people to have, and I see your hand up, Jen. We empower certain people. Like if you want to contribute to the website, you can reach out to Angie, and she would let you know what needs to be done. But yeah, I would suggest if Margaret wants to be able to continue doing work in some way, that Margaret and I can have a conversation about what opportunities there are to do different types of procurement or reaching out. Because I think Margaret's skills of doing outreach too could be great if we refocused on building new bridges to the business community. So if the motion passes, I can talk to Margaret about what she wants to do longer term and how she wants to contribute. And then Jen, I saw your hand up as well.
Yes. So is there a backup if somebody gets ill or has to go, be out of town, is physically not able to be there? Other than Gail, will Gail be backing up everybody?
That's a great question. Yeah, and we didn't talk about that, Jen. So Gail's smiling. I don't know if she feels comfortable being the backup for everyone, but yeah, I think that we should have a backup and some redundancy built in for each of those positions. And I'd encourage folks to think about who they would have as the backup. for each of those positions. And what I would say is that maybe what we should do, Jen, is empower each of those people that we've listed to choose the backup, because they might know who is best for each of the positions. So, and that we don't have the same backup, right? So Delinia and Angie couldn't choose the same backups for the accountant and for the website respectively. But yeah, I think that's a great idea, Jen. I think that we should have backups for each of the positions, because someone could win $10 million and move to some far-flung Greek island, or yeah, get sick, right? So those are two viable options. Jen, how do you feel about?
I do have to say, I appreciate, Jen, that you think that I'm capable of backing everyone up. That is like the sweetest thing I think anyone's ever said about me.
I don't know if you're pulling my leg or not. Well, but that's what you're there for. You're the backup. But I think your idea is good, because I wouldn't know what to do to step in for Angie. Help me. I need a psychiatrist. So they would better know who can do their job in the event of a lottery win.
That's a great suggestion.
Delinia, did you want to build on Jen's comment, or did you have another comment to add as well?
I kind of had another comment. As far as I kind of had a question about Margaret's part. So the new volunteer coordinator is going to take over like the old business stuff, and then we're going to see if we can get Margaret to go out get new business stuff. Is that kind of the plan?
I was just making a suggestion because Margaret was here. I was more suggesting that Margaret could do anything that she wanted to do as a board member. I know that Margaret and Thea had talked about creating a new business committee to bring in members of the business community.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, my intention was the program coordinator would be able to take on what responsibilities the board members had previously done for the grant, so that it would take the burden off of all of us, so that we would have our time freed up and we'd be able to do more strategy work and advising work and be more volunteers when we choose to be, not because we have to be. Because I feel like up to this point, we've had to show up. We've had to staff the clinics. We've had to coordinate everything, which puts an unfair burden on us because we're volunteers. So
thinking smarter, not harder.
Yeah, totally. And so Gail, I see your hand up, and then Jen, I see your hand up as well.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that in no way does this limit our options to contribute or work on projects or do the things that we're good at, including the things that Margaret is good at. The goal here is to make those things optional so that we don't have to worry that an event might not happen because not enough board members can show up to do it. If we want to show up to do it, we still should show up to do it, because we are equally as empowered to be volunteers in our own events as any other community member. The difference will be that we'll coordinate it with Doriandra now, so that if I decide I want to volunteer for the vaccine clinic, instead of bugging Ian about it, I'll send a note to Doriandra saying, I would like to be a volunteer at the clinic. And then she'll tell me what she wants me to do, or ask me what I want to do, or whatever her process will be. But, and the same thing with Margaret. If she's like, I'd like to help procure stuff, then Doriandra will say, great. Part of why we liked her is that she seemed to have good delegation skills. So, we can still be delegated to insofar as we choose. And I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. This is an expansion of opportunity, not a limiting.
Thanks, Gail. And I wanted to pass it on to Jen really quick. Jen was teasing me because I was yawning earlier, so I might run off screen and grab a giant pot of coffee. But Jen, I see that you had a comment as well.
Okay. And you can call me Jay. I've been called that too. So the thing is that this person, this wonderful sounding person, going to be a grant writer, or are we going to have a separate grant writer which to me, I thought was going to be the case, that we had someone that's just focused and dedicated to grant writing. And then the other person do what I thought you were hiring her for. Okay. She or he.
The board approved that we would hire one contractor, that we would contract with one person. And our number one need right now is for someone to assist Ian in the grant factor of it. So the volunteer coordination part of it is important, but it's really only one piece of the puzzle. And unless we get someone who can work with grants, which this person will need to come up to speed on that, it's not an immediate thing. We want to make sure we have somebody who can get themselves enough funding to stay with us. So the grants are really important, and we were a little bit less effective and efficient in communicating that early on than maybe we could have been, and so that may have led to some of your confusion, Jen, and I'm very sorry about that. I'd like to apologize for that. We're all kind of new to this process, and we learned a lot. We will do better next time these things need to be communicated. But yes, this person will be writing grants eventually, and definitely will be active in that area. That's the exciting thing about contracting with someone, is that it's they can have a very broad skill set, and we can utilize all of those skills. We're not limited to just like one narrow job description.
So my part of the question is there any reason why we cannot hire a grant writer to be and something that's in the back of my mind, a grant writer told me that it's a fallacy, it's not true, that grant writers can write grants so they can pay for themselves. It's not the case, it's the opposite. And there's a lot, I know nothing about grant writing. But so this is someone who does it for a living, and that made me wonder what the heck. Did I not hear that being brought up, that the grant writer can pay for themselves?
Yeah, so I wanted to chime in really quick, and I hope that we can continue this conversation in the future. So I spoke to Doriandra specifically about her lack of experience writing grants, but her experience implementing grants. So part of bringing Doriandra on initially is that I want to be able to empower Doriandra to learn grant writing. And so I'm going to be teaching her and training her how to be able to write grants. And all grants are very different. Like, I work at the University of Oregon, and some of the grants that we get there are through the National Science Foundation and the National Institute of Health. They're incredibly different than the grants that we're receiving through Oregon Health Authority, or the grants that we've received through the Lane Arts Council, or the grants that we've received through the Oregon Heritage Foundation. And so when we say grant writers, like, someone that writes a grant, that might be a small portion of their position, but in reality, that's part of their job duty to be able to get additional funding for the job description that they have as part of the duties for their contract. So what I'm hoping is that this contracted person, we're hiring them for a set of duties related to the two grants that we currently are receiving through Oregon Health Authority, one through our FEMA work that's funded through December, and then one for our vaccine confidence and vaccine clinic work that's funded through June. And so this person, we'd be teaching them and training them about grant writing. They'd be doing the clinic coordination, program coordination, volunteer management role through June. And then hopefully, fingers crossed, they learn skills about how to be able to write grants, and that they get another grant for July. And then maybe they get, they fund their position from July through June of 2023. So to answer your question about hiring a grant writer specifically, Jen, that's a super complex question. And there's a lot of reasons why it would be tough to bring on a grant writer. And I don't want to go too deep into the weeds, but rather than hiring, two positions, I think it's better that we just bring on the single program coordinator on contract for the initial 2 months, and then we would vote again if we wanted to continue their contract for an additional 9 months. And instead of hiring on someone just to write grants, I think it would be better to continue that conversation around what a grant writer does and what types of grants we're interested in continuing to get, while training the program coordinator to be able to write grants as part of their contract position, knowing that that's not something that they know how to do right now. But I spoke to Doriandra after talking to the hiring committee, and it is something that she's interested in doing and learning about.
So can I just ask, is there any way that this person, Dorothea, is that her name? Oh, I'm sorry, Dorinda, can be shadowed or, be observed by a member of the executive board to learn, so that eventually someone on the board is understanding how that works and can pass it on for future reference? Just, do you follow my question, my line of question? Say something happens in 2 months, an emergency occurred and she had to go away. So would it be good to have someone learning those steps as she is learning them for a backup? I don't know what it is with me in the backup.
Yeah.
I got frozen today, that's why.
Well, Ian is currently the person doing that work. He is familiar with that work and he is doing the work. So in a sense, he's the emergency backup that we're currently rolling on. So if we had a flat tire, he's that little donut and we're getting down the road, but we're not doing a very good job of it. So what we want to do is put a real tire on there. And that's what this position is designed for. But, Ian's still a donut and we can still lean on him if an emergency happens. I mean, if we get to the end of this too much contract and we decide this isn't the right fit, we will have to start the hiring process again. And then we will find another candidate. But our goal here is to make it so that we don't actually have to be the stopgap for function moving forward, because all of us are volunteers. We're all going to have a new election, and it needs to be a system that we can put new board members into as time moves forward in case we don't get reelected. There's another coup, or whatever happens. People's lives happen. Sometimes they're done. They don't want to be on the committee anymore. They don't want to be on the board anymore. And so we're trying to set up some systems so that even if that happens, there isn't it doesn't all fall apart. Like, we've got the structure there, the bones are there, and we know how to move forward with these things. And so that's why we're trying to hire people who either have the skills we need or seem capable of getting them, we hope, really fast. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it's very helpful. And it also tells me that we're on the same page about having a book or backup. We're good on that and how important that is. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Thanks so much, everyone. And all of this, I'm going to review with the attorney that created our contracts. So she's based here in Sacramento. I'm in California, by the way, visiting family. But the attorney that is a friend of mine, her name's Mari. She's passed the bar in Oregon and in California. And so I want to be able to make sure that the contract that we offer to Doriandra is compliant with Oregon labor law. So all of these questions that folks are bringing up, I'll bring up to Mari before we draft a contract. So I wanted to have incorporate Delinia's friendly amendment into the motion that I was bringing, with Delinia acting as the point of contact for all of our accounting contractors, including Andrea Garcia currently, Angie acting as the point of contact for all of our website contractors, which currently is Brent and Joe Studios, me acting as the point of contact for Doriandra Smith if we hire her, and then Doriandra Smith, if she's accepts our offer, being the point of contact for our contractors related to the vaccine clinics. So that's graphic designers, videography, and food, if she accepts the position. And music too, sorry.
I'd like to second it.
Okay, cool. I think I saw Angie's peace sign first. So all those who want to vote in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. And Jen, did you have your hand up as a question, or were you voting in favor? Sorry.
As a question, please. Thank you. So do we need to put in there the backups? I'm just curious. No? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but we decided that each individual person was going to choose who their backup is, and no two people can choose the same backup.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. So all those in favor who wanted to vote, please raise your hand or say aye. And all those who wanted to vote against the motion, please raise your hand or say nay. Okay. Angie, did you get everyone? Okay, perfect. All right, so our next motion, and we're running just a touch behind, is by Anand. Anand, you brought a motion forward, and I can share that via screen share regarding the proposed reservoir in South Eugene by eWeb.
I'm sorry, my brain went out. It went to Tahiti and left me here. One more time.
Yeah, so Anand, you asked me to share with the board a resolution to support the cessation of the forest clear cutting in South.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. I'm sorry. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Yes. So this actually came from one of the other neighborhood associations, and they were very concerned that eWeb was about to clear cut a forest which is under their purview, but nonetheless is considering all the global warming that we're dealing with right now, an incredibly silly thing to be doing. Well, okay, dangerous thing to be doing. So all I was proposing is that we support the motion by the other neighborhood association whose name eludes me at the moment. But I was hoping that we would support that motion and be able to take it to the Neighborhood Leaders Council, where hopefully they would support it too. So all the neighborhood associations would be kind of in supporting each other in this motion. Does that make sense?
So I see a head nod that I don't think Thea understands, or she needs some more clarification. And then Andrew, I see Andrew's hand up as well. So I'll put Andrew first in the queue and then Thea shortly afterwards. Andrew?
If I can find.
I guess my question is just around, I think I remember hearing something about the reservoir up on Friendly or whatever it is. For whatever reason, that's not going to be usable in the future. I don't really have all the information. I just remember hearing something about that in the past. Is this essentially like a replacement for that reservoir? Or I guess I just don't have enough information, right? Cutting trees sounds really bad, but I looked up that parcel on the map. And I guess I'll just say one issue I have with the resolution is that it talks about urban heat island effects. And I have a friend from grad school who analyzed urban heat island effects in Eugene specifically. And while that's a totally extreme problem, it's not a problem in that neighborhood. That's actually the coolest part of Eugene for a lot of reasons, including they have lots of green space and trees. So I like completely agree, but also at the same time, like if the whole city can't have a reservoir at the expense of like a few trees in an area that has a lot of trees, I'm like a little reluctant to support, but I don't feel like I have all of the information I need to make a decision, I guess, is what I would say. So I'm sorry, there were a lot of things in there.
No, that's fine. I'm trying to find, Ian, did I send that information to you via Facebook, or I did? Okay, let me see if I can find that then. If I can find the original listing. Oh man, my computer is being all wonky, sorry. Ian, if you can find that and put it in the chat so people can actually see it
Stephen
themselves.
is saying that it replaces the College Hill tank. So someone who probably relies on that. I mean, our need.
So what I'll do is I'll share via the share function on Zoom chat. And I just wanted to let folks know and remind people that because this is a board meeting, we normally don't allow members of the public to share during board motions, but I just encourage anyone to share in the Zoom chat. So we have a record of if you wanted to share any resources with the board. And right now I'm going to share the eWeb motion and then pass it on to Thea, unless Andrew, you wanted to add something else as I share the motion with everyone.
No, I think I expressed a couple of concerns without a whole lot of specificity or resolution, and I'll let the group do what they will with those concerns.
So with that, I'll pass it on to Thea. Thea, you're next in the queue. And then Gail, you're after Thea and on deck. Thea?
So if this is what Anon was talking about, I understand, but I wasn't sure if he was talking to what documenting he was talking about supporting. But we do need water, and water is going to become critical. And the news piece I saw on it happened to be in a field, and that any trees that were removed, they were going to replace in another area. I could be wrong, but that's what I saw on the news. So Anon, is this what you were referring to for us? Because I feel like I would need to do more research before a vote.
Possibly.
Then I would definitely need more research before I could vote on anything, because
Okay.
I don't want to vote on something that I don't have the full background.
So Anand, Gail's next in the queue, but this is the document that you asked me to share via email. So this is the resolution that came from Sheena, which is the South Hills Neighborhood Association in Southern Eugene, that have come together through Save the eWeb Forest, which is a kind of ad hoc organization. Thank you, Jane, for sharing that with the group. Have come together in support of preserving that land. So Gail, I wanted to pass it on to you next. And thank you, Andrew, Gail, and Delinia for sharing.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that Ian emailed the entire board earlier all of the documents associated with this question, including the entire description of the project from eWeb. It discusses the fact that this land was purchased for this purpose 40 years ago, that it was always the intention to build at least one reservoir on that land, that the neighbors who bought around that land were aware of that purpose, that they have decided based on responding to climate change that it would be better to have 2 reservoirs rather than 1, and instead of building them sequentially and having 2 different highly disruptive construction projects, they determined that they could do 2,100 fewer dump truck runs and save a huge amount of money that I don't recall right now if they did both of them at the same time. The College Hill Reservoir is old. It needs to be retrofitted, but they can't take it offline until there's another reservoir that can maintain the water pressure for the city. And the goal here is to provide water security in the event that we lose our main water source, which is the Mackenzie River, due to an earthquake that destroys a dam or some other natural disaster that prevents us from using our primary water source. So there's a lot of really important history behind this. I am a tree sitter. I love me some trees, and I do not want to see trees cut inappropriately. But I also understand that we need to make plans for the future. Water is essential to the function of our of our entire city, and that this is not something that came out of nowhere. The thing that is making it confusing for folks is this move to do 2 reservoirs at once, and the pandemic meant that the communication around this project coming up very quickly didn't get out to as many folks. So some folks felt really blindsided by it happening right away. I would encourage all of you to go back to your email, go through and read all of the documents. Please read Anand's statement because I think it's worth reading. Please read the statements from the neighborhood around the area because their concerns are valid. And please read the statement from eWeb. This is a big question, and I personally don't feel like we've done enough background as a board, given that I can hear that several people did not read those documents before tonight's meeting, and I would suggest that we table this question until the next board meeting.
And thank you for
I'm
that,
okay with
Gail. And dovetailing on Jen's comment too, I think I could do a better job of communicating in advance to the board, at least a week in advance. I'm on vacation right now with my family, so I could have done better. I've been prioritizing spending time with my newborn nephew, who's adorable, but I probably won't share photos at the end of the meeting. So Andrew, we do have just a touch more time if you wanted to share something. I think what I've heard from Thea and from Gail is that they would like more time to be able to research this before we bring this back to the board for consideration. Andrew?
First off, I just want to say thanks, Gail. I missed a lot of, I saw that was on the agenda, but I missed the very comprehensive review. So I'm going through my emails right now. so I can educate myself. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. I was just going to say, though, I think one perspective that I would like people to think about, and I don't know like how much I agree with this because death by 1,000 cuts is also real, but like when you think about the urban tree canopy in Eugene, and how many trees we have, 300, even if they were fairly mature trees, is actually like a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction. And one thing that I think about is whatever enables us to live in a compact footprint and not go farther into the South Hills or put more houses out near Cresswell or Veneta or wherever people might go. And if they can live in neighborhoods that look a lot more like our neighborhoods, it's going to save a lot of trees somewhere else. And they might not be trees in a neighborhood in South Eugene, but they are trees in Oak Ridge or somewhere else. And I think that's why I personally really struggle a lot with like the call to action for like save these 50 trees here, because we're humans and we have an impact, and we're definitely going to do that, and we have to choose where and how we do that. So if this is a project that enables people to live in town and not out of town with all of the things that go with that, then unfortunately 300 trees might be what it costs. I don't, just some perspective. I forget how many trees we have, but someone was bringing this point up to me because LTD has been accused of cutting down a lot of trees, which is sort of true and sort of not true. And then you do the calculation on like what 100 or 200 trees represents in our city, and it's like way, way, way less than a fraction of a percent. So just perspective.
Thanks for that thoughtful comment, Andrew. And I'd really like to come back to this. And Anand put in the chat that you would feel comfortable tabling the motion, so you're getting a thumbs up. So what I'd like to do is bring this back to our next board meeting in August. Just a heads up, Anand, the NLC doesn't meet in August, but the next NLC meeting is on Tuesday, the 27th. And I will bring this up to the NLC on Tuesday, the 27th, just to get a kind of pulse in the room of where folks are. And with that, I'd like to pass it on to Stephen. Stephen, I think you're best to introduce the next project, but I just wanted to share my thanks. You've been leading such comprehensive work on getting a deep history of the Whitaker as a place, the people who used to steward this land and call the Whitaker and the entirety of the Eugene area home. And I just really wanted to salute you because your project came at the behest of a former, it was at the behest of community members who inquired as to whether or not the Whitaker as a place should be renamed. And then the past chair, Christopher Gatsby, directed you to be able to research the history of the Whitaker, which you've done in spectacular fashion, much to the benefit of myself. And I hope that other board members will find your work as enlightening as I have. And tonight, I just wanted to let the board members know that we're not asking the board to take formal action tonight. What we are asking for is a pulse check. What we're doing tonight is giving Stephen an opportunity to talk about the work that he's been doing over the past year. So Stephen's been at this for 12 months, working very diligently and comprehensively to study the history of the Whitaker. And what we're asking is for the board. Can you all hear me? It sounds like my connection might have gone up a little bit. Yeah, so what we're asking tonight is that the board listen to Stephen's presentation, learn, and then really give a gut check. Is this information, is this work that we should continue on? And then during our next meeting in August, if the board feels that we should continue with this work and have Stephen work on behalf of the board, then we would have a deliberation and we could give opportunities for a motion and a vote. And so with that, I wanted to pass it on to Stephen to be able to introduce the work that you've been doing on behalf of the board and really provide an overview of what this past year has been like for you and what you've uncovered. Stephen?
Thank you, Ian. Can everybody hear me? The materials that I prepared for you, I understand did not go out till shortly after midnight today. So could I have a show of hands whether anybody has had a chance to look at the progress report, the quotes from John Whitaker's autobiography, or the quote from his last address to the Oregon Assembly? Could you just give a show of hands if you had a chance to look at those documents? Great, that's helpful. So what I will do this evening, I have a short PowerPoint presentation to set the context for the documents that I sent out. It would be good for people to have looked at those before August 18th for the next board meeting. But hopefully what I will be saying this evening will help you, guide you through those and give you the high points of to be aware of as you're going through that. Ian, can I share my screen just by clicking the green button? Okay. Can everybody see the first slide? Thank you. So this was the overview of where we are. As Ian has mentioned, when this subject was brought to the board in June last year, Chris, the former chair, asked me if I'd be willing to do the research on it, because I had indicated I was willing to do that. And the board was okay with me, the former board was okay with me running off to do this research. Ian was appointed by the previous board to be my contact person. He guided my research and placed the work that I was doing in a worldwide context. That was really important. And that also led to the preparation of the values statement that we also that Ian also sent out to the board. I never expected it to be something that would take more than a year to work on. It has been life-changing for me and has opened my eyes to a lot of things that I had no idea about. First off, as you're looking at the materials that I sent, try to look at them through the eyes of the mid-19th century. It was a very different place from 2021 in Eugene. For one thing, most of the settlers were quite young. John Whitaker arrived in Oregon at the age of 32. By the time he was in his mid-30s, he was a judge. By the time he was 38, he was elected governor of Oregon. So 6 years from arriving in Oregon, he's governor of Oregon at the age of 38. Compare that to the average age of the Whitaker board now. We're not geriatrics, but 38 is still pretty young for governor of the state. There were very few people voting at that time. The total number of votes in the election that followed his administration, there were only about 10,000 votes for governor of Oregon at that time. So it was a pretty small operation, this settler government in Oregon. Bear in mind that this is like only a little bit more than twice the population of the Whitaker voting for governor in 1862. Also, Democrats back at that time were in support of slavery, and generally backed the southern states in the Civil War. The Republicans were generally abolitionists. The issue of abolition was very much like the litmus test issues of the day, like today, abortion being a kind of litmus test. When you're looking at a politician, looking at what their position is on particular issues, abolition was one of those litmus tests at that time. The question is whether John Whitaker, as people have said, was a racist. I've received from the Oregon Historical Society a handwritten autobiography by John Whitaker, and it's about 14 pages. we know it's authentic because it's in the same handwriting as his handwritten letters to friends at the time. It covered the period from 1862 to 1866. He clearly had strong white supremacist and racist views expressed in his autobiography. When one of the Oregon senators was killed in the Civil War, it was his job as governor to appoint a replacement. He appointed a noted abolitionist to the vacancy. He was not selected to run for a second term by the Democrats. They selected one of Joseph Lane's buddies from the Road Wars. And the votes against him in favor of the Governor Gibbs, it was 2-1 in favor of the abolitionist side in the 1862 vote. So this indicated that on the question of white supremacy and racism, John Whitaker was, as they say, on the wrong side of history, even back in 1860, 1862. It's not something that is possible from anything I've seen so far to indicate that there's any kind of cultural relativity with us misjudging 1862 from our standpoint. His views were out of step with 60% of the electorate back in 1862, even though it was quite a small electorate at that time. Was he an exclusionist? Did he support the exclusion clause in the Oregon Constitution, which excluded Black Americans from living in Eugene back at that time? I also sent out the last page of the last few paragraphs of his last address to the Oregon Assembly at the end of his term of office in 1862, with his call for the Assembly to enforce the exclusion clause. And going back to the racism, I sent out the handwritten autobiography. I sent out a one-page, or Ian sent out for me a one-page of extracts from the autobiography that indicate where he stood on white supremacy and racism. So those were two issues that I was investigating throughout this: is who was he? What were his views on things? One issue when we're looking at the name of the community, I've had a lot of contact, as you'll see in the progress report when you get a chance to read it before next month. I've had a lot of contact with the Kalapuya tribal members and the Grand Ronde, made a lot of friends, and clearly the land that we are living on is Kalapuya land, and changing the name, if we change the name to anything other than a Kalapuya name or a Chinook Wawa name, would probably constitute an inverse land acknowledgement. It would be calling into question whether or not we acknowledge that this is Kalapuya land. The other big reason for needing to do more work on this, if we decide to proceed, the city has no trauma-informed process for a name change, and this would need to be created by us. There have been other processes where communities have changed names and it's involved the tribe, and there's been a lot of pain and triggering of generational trauma in these processes. This is something that we really need to bear in mind as we go through this. Go through carefully, deliberately, and sensitively, but being aware that a lot of people can be hurt by this process. As Ian mentioned at the beginning, it's too soon to make any decision other than hopefully next month voting whether to keep on it or to stop working on it. If we vote at next month, a lot of work to do. And it would make it very easy, much easier at next month's board meeting if you had had a chance to read the materials that Ian sent out for me. I'll take any questions, or while you're reading the papers that Ian sent out, if you have direct questions for me that you would like to hit me with between now and August 18th, feel free to do that. And I will put, after I finish this presentation, I'll put my phone number and my email address in the chat, so you can contact me directly if you have questions before August 18th that you didn't think of asking this evening. There we go. That was, I think, 10 minutes. Right, Ian?
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephen. 10 minutes is not nearly enough to really give the time and effort that you've put into having a much deeper understanding of our history, some of which is in danger of being lost. And so I just really want to be mindful of the tremendous effort you've put in on behalf of the board, on behalf of the community, so that we can have a deeper understanding of the land that we live on, of the cultures that came before us, and of the namesake that our community is named after. So thank you so much, Stephen. And I wanted to give Delinia the first opportunity to share some of her impressions and ask any questions, and then Andrew as well. And thank you so much for offering for board members and to reach out directly to you if they have any follow-up questions. I've shared your email in your email address with the board in the email that I sent out earlier. So Delinia, you're next, and then Andrew, you're on deck. Delinia?
Yeah. So I just wanted to let you know, Stephen, we just got the historical documents from the Head Start school, and Dan is going to be working on it. I was actually thinking you were going to be at the board meeting last time, but just to let you know, he's working on that stuff. So you might want to get with him when you're ready for like the 70s and beyond. That's all.
Who was the contact there? Maybe you could send it to me, Delania.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Andrew, you're up next, and then Gail, you're on deck.
Just want to say thank you. This was really awesome, and I think really important work. So thank you. First off, I would be really interested in, so I guess as a way of introduction, I've been doing public participation training for the last 2 weeks from 6 to 10 a.m. every day. So I've been sucked into that world, and something I do professionally. And one thing that I've been thinking about as you've been talking is just like, right, in your materials, you talk about like the potential for like white supremacist backlash. And I think that like, because we live in a systemically racist society, that backlash extends to people who maybe just like feel an attachment to a place without understanding all of the roots of why we're saying this might, our neighborhood might have a really white supremacist kind of name. So I'm wondering if like, I guess maybe the way I see moving forward, before we can like really take a position on this, I would encourage us to do a lot of work with the neighborhood and have dialogues with people outside of just the board, and really run a, you know, I don't want to like buzzword this, like an inclusive public process, and bring people along. Because I think that we risk, while it can totally be the right thing to do, we risk not bringing everyone with us, and in the long run causing more harm than good, just because people are not, people haven't done as much work as you have, Stephen. And I would just encourage us to think about moving really deliberately, quickly, but deliberately on whatever we want to do. So yeah, I'd just be interested in doing that. No suggestions on exactly how we do that. These are hard conversations. And it's really challenging. We're not looking for necessarily like total consensus. Not everyone needs to agree, but we do need people to feel like whatever process we do was fair, and that people were heard. And those are kind of different things. So just a thought, because this is really heavy. But I appreciate the conversation, and I appreciate your work, Stephen, because this is really important stuff.
Andrew, thank you. Yeah, I think there's a lot of work still needs to be done on the research side. I've really kind of only scratched the surface at this point, and I think it will probably be, it probably will not be till sometime early next year that the board itself will even be in a position to be able to make any kind of substantive yes or no kind of question on it. I think probably what is needed is some kind of subcommittee of with a lot of outside participation, community participation, commercial business participation, participation from a lot of different areas to work on the research issues before even making a determination whether to make the change or not. It's quite possible that we could do an awful lot of research and still at the end of it decide that it's really not worth making the change. It's would not constitute more than virtue signaling without systemic change continuing and transformation on many other levels. It could be that decision. We could say, okay, we're going to live with the name, but we're going to make it much more known where the name came from and why it's called that, and use that as part of the consciousness raising rather than, but as far as the time is concerned, there have been so many other processes in Oregon that have been very damaging for members of tribes. And even though we risk not bringing a lot of people along with us early in the process, I think it's very well worthwhile moving forward. I would call this open heart surgery. A lot of us are only able to live in this community with so many people with generational trauma just under the surface, so many people with fear of white supremacy. To be able to live like that requires, to a certain extent, a closed heart. These processes are only valid as if they act as open heart surgery, surgery that leaves us with an open heart at the end of it. The whole thing is a healing thing. It's not just to change the name. It's not just to show that we're more woke than other communities. It is a process that the community will go through and grow through it and be an easier place for many people to live than it currently is. I've had some very wrenching conversations with people during this research, some of which are confidential, but there is a lot of fear out there, and it's based on real stuff. And the Human Rights Commission tracks this stuff all the time, and anything that triggers more of that for more people is something that we should be very careful about doing. Hope that isn't a too long-winded response.
Not at all. I appreciate it, and I totally agree with your sentiment. I think to clarify what I was saying is that before I think the board could support anything, right, we need to get more of the facts, which is what you're doing. But we need to talk with the community. And when I say public participation, I don't mean we just go and talk to people and get a vote of like people in the neighborhood. I think like I would want to know like how do you know, people who've been hurt by trauma in our neighborhood, how do they feel about it? Is that actually meaningful to them? We should amplify their voices. So we should talk to everybody, but it's really important to talk to the people and amplify their voices for people who are experiencing that trauma. And that's all part, right? I'm not suggesting like a vote, but I think we should go talk with the community and find out what this really means to them. And I appreciate that we've already talked with the tribes, and it's very helpful to know that they don't want to get involved in drama, but they will certainly help us if we are ready to make changes. So things like that are what I think we should be looking for. It'd be great to talk with people who've been part of the Black community in Eugene for a long time and how they feel about it, and other stakeholders who, you know, live in the WIT or live WIT adjacent, and really understand their perspectives before we even begin to think about taking a position on this.
Absolutely. One of the
really
conversations
appreciate
I had with was somebody whose family has been in Eugene for almost 80 years, a Black Eugenian. And it was quite a dramatic conversation with somebody whose family has been here that long, and yet the fear is still there. It was startling.
Thank you so much for that conversation, Andrew and Stephen. I wanted to give Gail a chance to voice, if she would like to, a comment that she put in the chat. And Gail, I can share that as well if you prefer that instead.
No, I'll take it. Thank you, Ian. Well, I had a couple of thoughts. The first is just to share personally. It was very uncomfortable for me initially moving to Eugene to think about making my home in a neighborhood that phonetically reads White Acre. And without knowing anything at all about Mr. Whitaker, who seems to have been the sort of person who would have been pleased by that reading, it felt weird. It felt wrong and awkward. The Biden administration is currently involved in a redoubling of the effort to go through the national land collection and find the places where inappropriate, offensive, or problematic names have been assigned to public land and rename them. And that's a process that's going on under the leadership of Deb Haaland. And so, we do have tribal representation at the very highest level in that process. And I'm curious to know if any of that effort could be leveraged to be a part of this process for us as a neighborhood considering a change to our name, potentially. That was my first question. And my second question was to ask, in your communications, Stephen, with the tribes, and I understand that tribal people do not speak as a monolith. There are many voices there. But were there names that felt that came from that source that felt like they would be appropriate for our neighborhood? Because I'm curious to know, I'm a solutions-oriented kind of human. I like to know kind of what direction possibly are we considering moving, human nature being what it is. If I want to get excited about the potential for something better. So I'm curious to know, was there anything that came from your tribal conversations around a potential replacement name? Thank you.
I'll take the 3 points. There is actually 3. The name Whitaker probably derives from a well limestone land, in the same way that Schwarzenegger, the former governor of California, meant black soil. So black soil and white soil. It's different types of agricultural soil, I think. The Human Rights Commission in Eugene currently has a working group called the WCC working group, and they have a subcommittee that is reviewing. It's part of the work plan of the Human Rights Commission, that group, to review all place names in Eugene in the coming year and identifying those with white supremacist connections. And then the Human Rights Commission will be making recommendations back to the City Council based on that research. They are a long way behind us in our work, or Ian and myself in our work. And I have been attending the meetings of that working group, and they've been picking my brain and I've been getting help from them. We are currently trying to get access to the Lane County Historical Society archives because they've been closed since COVID, and that is holding up some of the research we need to do. But we are working very closely with the Human Rights Commission. We don't need to reinvent another Human Rights Commission in Eugene, but I agree with you that the work we're doing needs to work in parallel with what the Human Rights Commission is doing. And we will be using similar resources within the city for the work we're doing. Lastly, the paper that I sent out did, at the end of the section on the Kalapuya, does indicate where the tribe's position is. And I think in my summary on the first page does summarize it. The tribe has the Cultural Resources Department of the tribe have indicated that when we and/or the city have made a decision that we want to change the name of the neighborhood, then we we have agreed on, or we have a proposed mechanism for a communication to the tribe indicating that we made that decision, then they will start the work on identifying a list of names that would be suitable for our neighborhood if we decide that we want to make the change. And clearly we can be working with them on that. They have a very well-qualified people working with the tribe, qualified in Kalapuya and Chinook Wawa on place names. It is a whole science of itself, place names. Typically, place names in Kalapuya and Chinook refer to some kind of natural features of the neighborhood, or what was growing there, or how it was viewed by people a couple of 200-300 years ago. Also, I have suggested in the possible next steps is coordinating a tour for members of the board to the Talking Stones, which are in Kalapuya, by the river in East Eugene, and that we have an offer from a Kalapuya, from a tribal member who is willing to lead that tour for us, so that we can see how names around the Talking Stones. Is anybody familiar with the Talking Stones?
Yes, I've toured them. They're beautiful. So
Yeah.
do I understand you correctly then that the tribes are not, have not, and are not interested in beginning the process of finding a name until after we have decided to make the change? So we can't look at this beautiful name that we would be moving to as a way to help people get on board with the change, because that's unfortunate. If I mean,
Yeah.
obviously it's their choice, and I don't mean to disrespect that. It's just that it's much more difficult to help people get on board with a change that they can't know about before they make the change. Does that make sense?
It does,
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
It's difficult, and it's the reason that we've reached this, why they reached this point, is the other processes that they've been through have been somewhat traumatic, and the trauma is very real. When I was studying Chinook Wawa last fall, in class discussions, about half the members of the class were tribal members, and conversation would on occasion trigger generational trauma, and it was very difficult. Tears, anger. It was I had never experienced it before firsthand like that. There's more in my progress report on that, but that's probably something that we should be discussing again next month, August 18th.
So I wanted to thank everyone first for the conversation and discussion we're having tonight. Again, I wanted this to be a conversation where the board members can share their feelings, their thoughts, how we're processing this actively, because ultimately, you know, this is an organization that has almost 50-year history, a 50-year history in 2024, and it could be very well that any decisions that we make as a board to continue this work is continued by a future board come next April. And so that's something that's been very near and dear to my heart, because what I want to orient us towards is towards liberation, right? This doesn't give land back to the Kalapuya people. This doesn't restore the natural capital that was extracted to build the capital for capitalism in the early United States. This does not even begin the conversation around reparations for the Kalapuya people that has only begun to be discussed at the city of Eugene. However, what I think is it does give us an opportunity to do is to create values for us as an organization and for us as board members for how we model interactions with our indigenous communities, because they really are a plurality. Much like our Black communities in Eugene, they're not a monolith. There's very many different persons in Eugene who self-identify as Black, and some of them do so as part of the African diaspora, and some of them do so as part of different diasporas around the world. And so in our interactions with the indigenous community, like Stephen said, I think it's really important that first and foremost, we're trauma informed, right? And so, you know, Gail was talking about bringing folks on board. What Stephen shared with me is that the Indigenous community members that he's interacted with don't want to re-traumatize themselves, much in the same way that they've been done in other cities, even here in Oregon. So I think that as an organization, as we start to look deeper into our own history, as well as the history of this place, that we do so with an eye around how can we do so in a trauma-informed way that doesn't re-traumatize and doesn't reactivate our Indigenous community members, so that we can be true allies. So that even if us as board members are replaced, that we build capacity in the organization for future board members to act as allies to the Indigenous community, and so that us as an organization can really work towards building justice in a restorative way. And I hope that we don't make any decision tonight except for should we continue this work or not. And I think that that is kind of a really simple juncture that we're at. And I'm hearing that we should learn more. I'm hearing that we should look at our own history within the context of this work. What I'm hearing is that if we do continue this work, we do so with a high level of public participation from a lot of different ways regularly. And I wanted to make sure that we do a gut check before we move forward, because what I'd propose between now and our next board meeting is that we look both into the documents that Stephen shared, but also into some ways that we could begin doing public participation if the board did want to move in a direction in which we engage with the communities. Because the Indigenous community has said pretty clearly to Stephen that they do not want to be a part of this process initially, that they have a set of protocols that they have for if the community wants to do a name change, but that would be completely up to them. They would rename this place, but they don't want to re-traumatize themselves. So kind of communicating this to the community is important too. But before we move forward at all, oh, Stephen, I see your hand up. I wanted to make sure that we just had a quick yes, no as a board. Should we continue on this work and empower Stephen to continue doing his research? Stephen?
Just wanted to clarify that they wouldn't be selecting the name. They would be giving us a range of names with the meanings, and that the second stage of our process is to select a name from names that they have suggested as possibilities. So it's not like they rename our neighborhood for us. It's they guide us into selecting a name. So just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, and before we even, kind of agree to different opportunities to move forward, I just wanted to do a gut check for folks and then give people an opportunity, board members, to reflect again. How do people feel about continuing to empower Stephen to do more research and then carving out a more substantial amount of time for our next board meeting in August to be able to continue this conversation and different potential paths forward? So we're getting a lot of thumbs up. And I know that Thea is not here right now, but that's exactly what we'll do. And please, one board member has already reached out to me and asked that I provide Stephen with their cell phone contact information. I'm happy to do that as well if people would like to have a phone conversation with Stephen. Stephen's been very generous with his time and he's continuing to do so. And if anyone wants to reach out to Stephen via email, I can resend his email information and his cell tonight after the board meeting, if that's what board members would like me to do.
Ian, I will put my contact information in the chat, and I will be using my AOL email address for this, but my regular phone number.
Oh, great. And I heard from Thea too that she supports more research as well. So with that, I wanted to do one more thing before we quickly talk about future topics for the board, but maybe that's what we'll do first is future topics for our next board meeting. What I'd like to do is carve up time for our next board meeting to do two things. One, to give Stephen about an hour of time, so a very substantive chunk of time, so we can have a conversation, a dynamic one, about what opportunities for a path forward. If we want to create a subcommittee, if we did want to go with the subcommittee route, who from the board would represent us and who from the community and communities rather in the Whitaker should we be bringing in for these initial scoping conversations. And then I also wanted to do kind of a quick check-in, maybe 10 or 15 minutes with each of our 4 committees. So transportation's meeting for the first time next week. The Whitaker Community Art Team has been doing work for a couple of years now and has projects that may be new to the board. The charter committee, I wanted to give Jen and give Teresa and Delinia a chance to do a quick update if they wanted to, and then Anand from Public Health and Safety. Just again, just a quick kind of committee report, and give time for each of the committees to do kind of a quick update on where they are, and give a chance for the board members to ask some questions. Were there any other items that Parks and EPD committee? Thank you, Thea. Were there any other items that board members wanted to bring up for discussion during our next board meeting in August, or maybe for future board meetings as well? Anand, go ahead.
Hold on. Unmuting. Good. So I think we should possibly go over the whole eWeb Force thing a little bit more intensely. There's a lot more to it. They're not really saying they shouldn't build a water tank. That's not really what the discussion is. So I think perhaps a bit more information about that would be better.
And Angie, I see your hand up as well. Thea, you were first, and then Angie, and then Jen, you'll go right afterwards. Thea?
Okay, my apologies, guys. I've been listening to all of it. Thank you, Stephen. That was awesome. But I'm also trying to take care of my girlfriend and her 3 kids. So do we need to have an AED for the next clinic, or can that be postponed, Ian? Margaret's information.
It can be postponed, and I think Angie might suggest this. We might have just a quick board meeting to approve some costs, as well as maybe have a quick discussion on the eWeb for a vote if there's a time horizon in August. But I wanted to have Angie give a contribution on that. So Angie?
Yeah, it sounds like I think it'd be really valuable for us to meet to talk about eWeb, and if we're going to support the group as a non, just to give us a chance to read things, give Ian a chance to go to the NLC meeting, like I said, get his finger on the pulse there. But I think we should meet before our next board meeting to discuss that. Maybe a short 30-minute meeting where we possibly vote on eWeb and then possibly vote on spending.
Okay, that seems like it works for Andrew. I see a thumb up. And it also, it sounds like the eWeb, and it looks like it works for none. The eWeb action might take place before our next board meeting, so we would have to act rather quickly. Jen, do you, oh, the cat. And then from Gail, I also saw, I'm easily distracted. I saw from Gail that we should also invite Doriandra to introduce herself at a future time. So what we might have to do is do committee updates in a staggered way. So do some committee updates in August and some committee updates in September, because I don't think we're going to have enough time for all committee updates in a single meeting. Jen, did you have something that you wanted to share really quickly?
Yeah, it's an aside, but how long does it take to put up the recordings so we can re-listen to the meeting? There's a lot of coverage today, and I need to re-listen. Thank you for sending those, by the way. But how long does it take to actually do it and then to get it posted? And are you posting on YouTube? And is it you or is it Angie?
So I'm in California, and they don't just not have enough water, they also don't have enough internet. So it took me like 12 hours to upload the video, just because my upload speed is very low. And so it's just me, and I'm hoping we can have a future conversation as a board to kind of evenly distribute who's doing some of the technical pieces for the board, who's doing the promotion of the meetings, both to Facebook and also in person. I don't know if you've been following the conversations that Delaney has had, but there's elders in our community who want to participate via phone, as well as unhoused members of our community, including the park ambassadors, who want to participate in our meetings. And I'd like to be able to do so, give them an opportunity to do so. So we might need to write our phone number on sandwich boards, and then also do more intentional outreach to our unhoused community and our elders to make sure that they're able to participate in our meetings if we choose not to go back to in-person meetings. And some people may always prefer calling in versus showing up in person. And so, Gail, I think you have a follow-up comment. You wanted to pass it on to Delinia in case Delinia had a follow-up comment or a clarification on some of the outreach that she's been doing. Jen?
Yeah, I do. But first of all, just can you put, because it gives you the places that's near you, but they all sound far away, and it seems like Tacoma is a place to go. If you could just address that for people who might get confused when you post the phone numbers. Do you know what I'm talking about? So that they can,
Yeah.
because they don't have one here in Eugene. So it's in Washington State. So if you give a little bit of information, that would be helpful for those who have trouble with the computer and their phone. I lost my train of thought. Okay, I thank you very much. That was very generous and hard work for 12 hours. Oh my God.
Yeah, I was up for the whole 12 hours. It took 12 hours to upload. It wasn't kind of like a watch pot, but I appreciate the compliment, Jen.
Oh, well, okay, so something that Delaney and I talked about is what a possibility of a coordinator, a seat. Just something to think about, and thus things really smooth out. A seed in your ear. Do you understand what I'm saying? You could nod. So that, like, Ian is gone, and he has bad connection, someone else can come in and coordinate everything that needs to be done, so that doesn't take so long. Because there was a lot of reading to do. There's emotional reading, Stevens, attachments, and I didn't even go to the ones that you had. Today turned out to be a day that I had no plan for, and I never left my house, that was the opposite of what I had planned. So I just a thought of someone who can take the reins and coordinate.
Well, Jennifer, that's part of what Ian and I are trying to model as co-coordinators, but we're finding our way, and sometimes Ian knows what's going on more than I do, and so it makes more sense for him to take the reins. That this is why we have an executive committee. This is why we have a chair and a vice chair and a treasurer and a secretary, is because those positions carry more responsibility, and that's just kind of inherent in the position. But as you know, we're all volunteers, so our job as the executive board members is to be able to reach out and get help when we need it. But it isn't necessarily something that needs to be codified, because of course that our work flexes. There are times when things are very busy and times when they aren't. There are times when Ian has perfectly great internet connection and it doesn't take 12 hours to upload things. But he had no way of knowing that was going to be the situation before he left for California. So we're trying to roll with the punches here and do the best that we can. And he acknowledged earlier that we can do a better job about getting information out to the board sooner. And we're going to try to do that moving forward. So that's our goal.
Thank you. And that's another influence of COVID-19, that we had to get a whole new board elected in this last election. So we're still getting to know one another. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen. Delaney, I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about your outreach. And then the last thing for tonight is I wanted to make a motion to get board approval to apply for another grant that's due next week. Delaney?
Well, I had a regular customer who lives in the park right now that he's very in touch with, like, the park ambassadors, and it's a really tight-knit community right now. I encourage them and anybody else to come to the meetings, but when I went to our sandwich board, the number wasn't there. And then I did notice that Wanda, and I know she's an older lady, had stressed that, she wants to come to the meetings, but, she doesn't know how to use a computer. So, making the phone number known, I think it's really, really important. I think I'm going to just mark it on our sandwich board that's in front of ours, if that's okay with Angie, because she put some beautiful stuff up there. But that's just making sure that we're communicating out to the general membership that, you know, we are trying to get stuff out. And to Jennifer's point, you know, we've been working quite for a long time now on the charter, and there's lots of times that we want to go back to these meetings to see certain items, and they're not online for us to watch. And it's a lot of information to take in, and just something that we both kind of felt is important to get it on the YouTube, especially the recordings. That's all.
Thanks so much, Delinia. And we can continue to have this conversation as a board for who would take on the responsibility of uploading videos once they're available to YouTube, so it's evenly distributed across membership, and those can be made accessible to the community as well. Angie, did you have a follow-up to Delinia's comment?
Yep, I can put the phone number on the sandwich boards. So we'll have that. And then depending on, and we can talk about who can upload it to our YouTube. If they're downloaded onto a computer, then I can't upload it. But if they're just kept on our kind of our cloud service, then I could download them. So just a thought, Ian, I'm not sure, I think you have to pick at the beginning of the meeting if you're going to download it or not. I don't remember exactly how it works, but the stuff that is still on our cloud, I can work on getting that online. So I can commit to that as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Angie. It's already 9:11. I did have one quick item for the board, but just wanted to, say that we are already going over time, so I appreciate folks staying a little later. The item that I wanted to bring folks to the board for consideration is a motion to put in an application to a request for quotation. So Lane County Public Health has received some CARES Act funding, so the same pot of funding that we've been receiving from Oregon Health Authority to do COVID work. And so this is a new grant that would go from August through December, and it's two components. And the first component is vaccine education, outreach, and capacity building, which is the same stuff that we've been doing with Oregon Health Authority. And the second component of it is vaccine incentives. And so basically, it's the same work that we've been doing with Oregon Health Authority, but it's the same money too, but we'd be working with the county and through the county versus working with the state. And so I've shared with the board through the email, the RFQ, it's a request for solicitations and written quotations, and the topic is vaccine hesitancy. So it kind of seems kind of arcane. It's 15 pages long, but what the actual document is doing is providing us potentially with another pot of money to continue doing the work that we're already doing. So I wanted to bring to the board a motion that we apply for the request for quotation. And I would basically replicate the same grant that we did with OHA. I'd copy and paste, I'd update the numbers, of course, but I would send that off to Lane County Public Health. And by the way, there's no guarantee that we get this because, and rightfully so, the county is prioritizing indigenous populations, rural populations, and populations of color, in addition to poor communities and communities that have disproportionate unhoused persons. So we wouldn't be taking money away from any of those groups, but I just wanted to let the board know that there's a lot of need in our county. And so we are not going to be the only people applying for these funds, and it's up to $85,000. So I wanted to make a motion that we submit an application and provide an opportunity for folks to be able to discuss any comments or concerns that they have before we make a motion. So I saw that that Gail seconded, but I wanted to just open it up and see if folks had any comments or questions or concerns. Okay, so seeing none, I wanted to open it up and see if anyone wanted to vote yes or aye to the motion by raising their hand or saying aye. And then it looks like it's unanimous. And we still have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 board members who are still present. So what I'm going to do following up after the board meeting is take the time it takes to upload the video. I'll share that with the board members in an email, as well as Stephen's contact information. The grant, the draft grant that was provided by Dennis. So it's not finalized, but it'll still give everyone a chance to see kind of where Dennis's head is at, and also give the transportation committee a chance to kind of wrap their heads around it before they meet next week. Thank you so much, everyone, for going an extra 15 minutes, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Night, everyone.